We are chopping Anthuriums today. Do I want to chop my Anthuriums? No. Do I need to chop them? Yes. And I'll tell you why. Alvin needs to make some money. I'm in this like weird zone where nothing's really happening right now because I finished a lot of projects before I went away. And then I'm back from vacation and like I'm starting to like pick things up again. So there's like this weird little gap where it stresses me out. So we're gonna chop some plants and sell them just to tie me over for a few weeks. And also, funnily enough, Lauren got requests, or seems to get quite a few requests of chopping up Anthuriums in a video. And I don't know why she told me. I don't know if the person was like, I like to watch you guys as a group chop up Anthuriums, but if you're that person, this video is for you. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Anthuriums to work on. That's not all that I'm going to be selling, but it's all I have time for in this video. There are a lot of Anthuriums that I like considered chopping up because, you know, it would make me some money, but like it's putting out a beautiful leaf right now and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Like for example, my Ace of Spades, I sat there in my tent just holding it in my hands and just willing myself to have the courage to cut it, but then I didn't. It's not getting cut. I love it too much and it's looking really nice right now. And then some other plants, I'm going to wait until like a new leaf hardens off, for example, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna show you what the plants are that we're working on today, and then we're gonna start unpotting the plants and then get to work. And being a repot video, it's probably going to be a pretty chatty one, so it's not going to be like fully plant focused. So if you're just here to hang out, then that's great because that's exactly what this video is meant to be. So the first one is one that I told you guys in last week's video that I was going to sell, and that's this Anthurium magnificum crossed with a dark form Ace of Spades. I have 2 of these. This is my less favorite one. I don't like this as much as my other one of the same seed batch. I do like it a lot, but it's just like I don't favor it as much. So I did consider selling just the whole thing as is, but I've been enjoying having the 2 of them to compare as they grow and as they like show different traits. So I decided I'm just gonna chop it and then I'll keep the bottom of it. So I probably end up just keeping maybe just this leaf. We'll see how the stem looks when I unpot it, but the buyer would get these nice top leaves. And then the other one of that seed batch, we're also going to chop. This one, I like this one a lot more just because the color is a little bit more orangey toned, and the hardened leaves are just a little bit darker, and the leaves, not the leaves, the veins are a little muted and a little bit less bright compared to this one. I guess it's not as apparent in the new leaves, but if you look at the old leaves side by side, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an illustration. The color is just a little bit greener and more vibrant on this one. This one's a little bit darker, more blue toned, I think, in the hardened leaves, and then it's just a little bit nicer. It's very marginal, but I do like this one more, so I will keep this one, but I will chop it. But of this one, I think I'm gonna keep the top cutting. This one, I need to chop it into at least 3 pieces, including my own. So this is my Anthurium Carib Queen. This is a J. Vanini hybrid of Dressleri and Rugulosum. This one is quite a vigorous grower, and I remember when we got it from Amanda, I think it was like almost a year ago, it was just like a node cutting. So it didn't have any leaves, and it sprouted a leaf in Charmaine's care in just a few weeks, and it's been growing really constantly ever since. And I think that the stem is long enough to get at least 1 chop in there. If there's just 1 chop, then I'll just give that to Charmaine, because with these like Amanda plants, the plan is always to eventually share them when we don't have like 1 each of that plant. And if I can get a second chop in, then I will sell that one. This one is an Anthurium papillolamnum crossed with Portier, also from Amanda. This one hasn't been growing huge. This one, I will admit, had some issues acclimating to me. So what I did when I got it is I just threw it into a bin because I already had a bin going for imports, and I wanted to root in there, except the problem is it got used to 100% humidity. So when I moved it into the tent, it just like, it turned into spinach. So that's what this leaf is doing. It's like, it lost a lot of water in the leaves and then it just kind of crisped up. But the new leaves that have grown in the tent have looked really nice. They're just not very big. It's popped out new leaves. So typically I don't like to chop any Anthuriums that are pushing out a leaf, but like I have to chop something. Like I had to choose something, and this one has quite a long stem. So I think that this one is choppable. Again, this one is one that like I'd have to make sure that I can get a piece in for Charmaine as well. Okay, this next one I'm still on the fence about chopping. This is my baby Anthurium papillolamnum RA5 self, also from Amanda. Here's my thought process. I know that Lauren has chopped her RA5s, and that kind of just gives me a little bit of courage knowing that like it's not gonna just throw a fit and die. Do I want to stunt the growth of this plant? No, but I'm also like quite happy with it at this size. So if it doesn't size up for a little while longer, I'm still quite happy with it. So obviously I'm going to be keeping the top cut. So this new leaf that formed while I was away is just freaking gorgeous. If I just had the plant be dormant like this for a little while, I don't think I would mind. So we're going to take a very safe cut of this one and then see what it does and see how long it takes to like wake back up again. And then the last one is not a chop, it's just a repot. This is a little cup of seedlings. This is a hybrid that I did with Jing. So mother plant is Jing's tofu, which is a no ID, like an Indo no ID. And pollen donor is my dark form forgetii, this guy here. So we just call it tofu forgetii. And I think they are quite cute. They haven't really fused their sinuses yet, but I think, is it Charmaine's already has a fused sinus, and I have 3 in here. So I will most likely be separating out this one to sell. Maybe the other one too, I'm not sure. I'll have to see what they look like when I pull them out. So those are the plants. I will start with the pond plants, just so we're dealing with one substrate at a time. Make the chops, move on to the tree fern plants, make the chops, and then I'm gonna take a break while the stems callus over and the wounds kind of start to dry out. And then we're gonna come back and pot them back up. All the while, chit-chatting, whatever comes to mind. We're all ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's get started. Since I'm like still kind of on the fence about the RA5, we're gonna start with this one, which I know for sure I am selling. And also, oh, I forgot to say, it had some rotty roots, this one. So I needed to get it out of here anyways. Just as an aside, what I've been doing to sterilize pon lately, like when I'm repotting like this, I'm not gonna reuse this pon in the repot. I'm gonna like put all the used pon together. And what I've been doing, since I hate boiling leca and boiling pon so much, I've just been like baking them in the oven in like 250 degree Celsius and like 30 minutes. And that's how I've been sterilizing it. And that way it kind of dries it out and it makes it easier to like find little dead root pieces as well. So if you're a hater of boiling because it's so messy, maybe that's a way for you to sterilize your substrates. This would also work for tree fern. I can't really boil tree fern, so that's what I do for my tree fern as well. Okay, so you can see like so many dead roots. Like all of this down here is rotted. So we're gonna do a lot of chopping. Let me just bring you in a little closer. All right, so I think that's about as much as I want to clean up. So I'm gonna be rinsing off the roots in the sink, and in that time I'll maybe like wash off any like rotty bits that are remaining, and then I'll pop this into like a hydrogen peroxide soak, about like 50-50, 40-60, something like that, and work on the next plants, and then they'll have like a little bit of time each to sterilize. All right, we're like somewhat rinsed off, and then I have my hydrogen peroxide solution. I'm gonna drink some coffee. Next up is the other Mag Ace. I don't think the roots are quite as bad on this one. I think that if there's any rot on this one, it'll be quite minimal. I haven't had to like sell plants for cash flow. Maybe not ever. I remember like I used to do it quite a lot in like 2020 and 2021 when I wanted to like, I don't know, go Christmas shopping or stuff like that to fund things that I wanted to do. But it wasn't like I needed to pay my mortgage kind of thing. But it's nice to have this kind of fallback because I've gone through sizing up plants like to the point where it stresses me out. It's given me like a newfound appreciation for small plants. So like deep down, I'm not that bothered that I'm going to be kind of stunting these plants for a little bit, hopefully not for too long. I don't think that I have as much like emotional attachment over the size of the plant as much anymore, with the exception of my Dark Phoenix. I know that there was like quite a bit of demand for that plant in general, and then in the last live sale, not the last one, but the last one I did with Lauren, there were people asking if I had my Dark Phoenix for sale. I didn't, and I only chopped it, was it like February or January or something like that? No, I think it was more recent than that. But anyway, I chopped it, and then like I've sold cuttings of it. It's root bound. It definitely needs a repot, but I know that chopping it will set it back from flowering. And that's like the main thing I want to do with that plant right now, other than obviously like continuing to grow it. But I don't need it to be like massive. I just want it to flower so I can make little Dark Phoenix babies. Oh, right. So I'm about to chop this. It's gonna be really hard for you to see, but the stem goes all the way down to here because it is grown from seed. So it starts really small. So I'm not gonna chop it all the way at the bottom, but I do wanna get like a few nodes in there, which will just make it way more likely that it's going to activate something. But I also wanna make sure that I keep like a good enough root system for the top. So I mean, ideally I would leave a leaf on there because it kind of looks like the plant. Like I don't want to ideally sell a leafless like butt cut, but the only leaf I could realistically include, which would be cutting it like right here, like about a little bit over halfway up, would be this one, and that's gonna like go at any minute now. So there's really no point in like making sure that I keep that. And if I try to include the next leaf, this one, then I'm leaving like a very small root system for the top. So that's just like not going to be an option, I don't think. So I'm going to cut it. I don't know if you can see, you probably can't, but there's like maybe like 4 nodes up. There's like some empty space where the old leaves have fallen or like been pulled. I don't remember. That's where I'm going to chop it. Oh, and I know like some people are really like nervous about chopping anthuriums, and for good reason, because they're not as easy to like look at the stem to find where the axillary buds are, but sometimes you will be able to find one. Here, I hope you can see it. Right where my index finger is, there's a little axillary bud poking out of the stem. So that's what you don't want to chop through, and like that's what you want to include on a cutting, but you can't always see it on an anthurium stem. So that's why it can be like pretty nerve-wracking to cut one. So I'm gonna try to include that, but avoid cutting roots as well. So there's really no way of making a cut without chopping through one set of roots, like one like primary root. So I'm just gonna have to just do it. I'm just gonna have to do it in the hope that it doesn't take out too many roots. All right, cut has been made. Now let's separate you. And that is now my top, which like if I really wanted to be aggressive, I could probably chop it again. Do I want to be aggressive? No, I don't know where I could make a safe chop. And like the only place I can see making a chop, I would only leave these two little roots for the top cutting. So I don't think that's gonna happen. So that is now my plant. And this is the butt cut. So, okay, like last time, Charmaine and I did a collab and we asked for like juicy questions. I don't remember if it was like my video or her video, but one of our videos we asked for like juicy plant questions or personal questions on Instagram. And then there were a few that came in about like our opinions on people selling butt cuts. And that would be like something like this, where it's like the bottom cutting with like usually tons of roots and no leaves, and people are selling it for quite a lot of money on Facebook. So I don't think I have like a huge opinion on it. I think maybe it rubs people the wrong way because like someone would be selling, you know, let's say for example, it's Carla Blackier. I don't know why I always use that as an example, but it's a Carla Blackier and it's a butt cut and I'm selling it for the price that I would charge a plant with leaves, then I feel like that's a little bit of a rip. But if you're selling a butt cut like this, especially if you've like kept it long enough to make sure that the axillary buds are going to activate and it's going to grow something, then I don't really see a problem with it, especially if you're pricing it lower than you would a plant with leaves, like a full-on established plant. I don't know, I don't really see a problem with it because like you're getting lots of roots and you're likely to get a plant out of it, and you're paying like a little bit less than you would a full-on plant. So that's, I guess, my very lukewarm opinion on butt cuts. And I want to say that I'm cutting these plants ahead of time, and I'm not going to be selling this like tomorrow. I'm going to be cutting it and like holding on to it, making sure like I see something. I want to see like root growth or, you know, something starting to activate or develop on the plant. Because sometimes, like, let's say for example, this stem was like submerged underneath the substrate for a really long time, and when the stem is like in darkness for a long time, it can turn like pale, yellowy, kind of whitish, or maybe like brownish. But then once it gets into light, it can start to like green up. So if I start to see it turn green and start to photosynthesize, then like that's also a good sign for the plant. So I just want to see something before I sell it. Sooner rather than later. Let's just hope that it doesn't take too long. So while I was doing those two plants, I have mustered up the courage to cut my RA5. Like, I've talked myself into it. So I know what a lot of people are gonna say, like, don't cut it. Like, you can find other ways to make money. I know. But this is a plant that I'm not going to be selling the cutting of until I see something on both sides, especially the top cutting that I'm keeping for myself. So if I see it declining, like it's gonna die, I'm not gonna be selling the cutting, just so I know that I have the plant. Also, in case anyone has ever wondered this, Amanda has given us her blessing to chop up the plants from her, sell them, etc. Not that anyone would think that she's the type of person to be like, no, you must never chop the plant, and get mad at people for chopping plants that she sells or gives to people. If you know her at all, which I hope you do, get like a good glimpse of the kind of person she is through our videos, but she's really not that kind of person. But she explicitly, unprovoked, gave us her blessing to like chop up, give away, sell, whatever, any of the plants. Like, she's not really fussy like that. Okay, so again, this plant was also grown from seed. So it's got that little carrot looking stem that tapers off at the end. And I'm trying to see how far it goes. It goes to about from here to here. There's no way I'm gonna get a cutting with leaves because all the leaves are right up here. And there's this much stem down here. I actually see a great place to cut it. And it already has what looks to be like an axillary bud that could be easily activated or monitored, and it's right, oh, where are you? Here. Do you see that little green dot? Wait, but I want to make sure I have enough roots on the top. If I chop it there, then I'm only gonna have this much roots. I'm okay with that. Auxiliary bud is right here. I'm going to cut it right here. triple checking my position. All right. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. Here is my top cut. And here's my bottom cut. So I'm also aware of the fact that Jing does not have this plant. And I think this is a plant that she would really like. Especially like my specimen is very bullate. I've seen multiple plants from this seed batch and some of them are a little bit like smoother in the leaf and mine is like super bumpy, which Jing I know would really appreciate. So I'm just gonna see if I can make a second cut. And I think I can. I don't know if this will make it like slower to activate again, but we're just gonna do it. So I know I have an auxiliary bud up top, so I'm cutting it right here. And then I have like a few dicey nodes on the bottom. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. So that's a cutting. The cutting at the bottom is so teeny tiny, but I know it's possible. There are auxiliary buds on both of these. I now need to make sure I don't mix up all the cuttings. Okay, so the RA5 is gonna go in, I guess, here with the plant tag. And I'm gonna make sure that the stems are suspended in air so they can dry out. You guys, that was really stressful. So we're gonna jump back to that original mag ace that we didn't cut yet, that has been soaking in hydrogen peroxide. This guy, we're going to get, what did I say? I said I was gonna keep the bottom cut. Do you see how like tight the nodes are here? So all the leaves are stacked right on top of each other. So in order for me to keep this, I'd have to chop it like on an angle, like here. And I'd be chopping right through roots and stuff. Upon further thought, we're not gonna go for that leaf. We're just going to chop him like just at a gap. The only gap I can see in the stem between roots and nodes. So he's upside down right now, but I'm chopping him right here. Now that's my butt cut. There's like this much stem on it. So I'm confident that there's something there as long as it doesn't decide to like just die. And then this is the top, which the roots are looking not bad now. So I will keep this until I see some healthy root formation and then off she goes. I'm trying to get in the frame so you can see my face. So that is all of the pond plants. Now we got 3 tree fern fiber plants to work on. Next up is the Pappy Portier hybrid. It doesn't have like the biggest root system. Oh my gosh, the stem is huge. Holy crap. Amanda gave us such a giant stem. So it's good that I have such a big stem to work with because I want to get 2 cuts in here, one for Charmaine and one to sell. So we're gonna chop it here, right here, and I guess again around up here. So each section will have a smallish root system. Obviously the bottom is gonna have the biggest root system. A little bit nervous for this one because this is a plant that I don't really have experience with. This is the first time ever propagating it, but it is a hybrid. So we're going to rely on some good old-fashioned hybrid vigor. Cutting number 1. Sometimes the beginning of a root or the loss of a root looks like an auxiliary bud, so make sure you don't confuse the two. I suppose if I cut it like here, this leaves this much stem on the top. Not a lot of roots, but it didn't have tons of roots to begin with, and then like a good amount of stem on this side to possibly activate something. I would love to include a leaf on this cutting, but I don't know if it's super possible. Actually, maybe it is. I'm going to cut it right above this leaf, which is like quite damaged, and I'm hoping that it holds on, but we're gonna do it. We have 2 cuttings. I'm gonna keep this one, which unfortunately this leaf is not going to form very well. And then this leaf. Fortunately, no real like rot on that one. So this one can be potted up right away. And these 2 just need to be like dried out a little bit before it gets potted up. Last plant to chop is my Carib Queen, and we'll see how much stem we've got, because I know this is a, this was not a plant grown from seed from Amanda. She got it as a plant from JV, or got it from somebody else originally from JV, but I know that it's going to have a shorter stem because she cut this plant for us. So many freaking roots. There's actually quite a lot of stem. Okay, I can actually really quickly see a cut that I can make. I don't know if it's gonna be very clear when I show this to you. So down here is like an original, like very small, it's about this big of a stem, which grew out another plant, and that plant stem is this one here, and then my plant is adjacent to that. So it's like this like Jenga situation. This stem here, which is like its mother, I can see an auxiliary bud on it. Yeah, I'm gonna attempt to just separate that. And you can kind of see that a little bit more clear now. So this was like the cutting. I don't know if that was like Amanda's or like what she got it as. So that was chopped, and from this little stem grew another plant here. And then she chopped that, and then from this plant grew my plant. And then this is what I believe to be an auxiliary bud right here. I really hope it is. So that's gonna get potted and won't be sold until something grows. So the oldest leaf is this one here. It's parallel to this leaf. So the only way for me to like cut and include a leaf would be to include both of these leaves, and that would leave the tiniest root system on top. Please hold while I think about this. Okay, I think I've decided. So down here, I can see a place where I can capture an auxiliary bud on its own. So I'm gonna do that cut right now. And then I think I can include this leaf for Charmaine. I think I can cut it like kind of on an angle to get this leaf, which doesn't leave the biggest root system for me, but I think it'll be okay. I might lose this leaf in the process. I might be cutting through that petiole, but I don't really see any other way short of having a scalpel, which I don't have, unless I make a few little cuts. We somehow managed to keep both leaves. So this is cutting with leaves right here. This is leafless stem cutting number 1. And where did it go? Oh, seriously, where did it go? Oh, here. Leafless stem cutting number 2. I need to take a break because that took a lot out of me in here, in my heart. Okay, so I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll be right back. It's time to pot up all the cuttings that I'm going to be selling and labeling them and setting them up to root out and hopefully sprout as quick as possible. We got label makers. We got my cups that I'm going to be potting them in. One of them is gonna go into this. We are ready. So the rest of it is just gonna be like a good old fashioned repot. So we're just gonna chat about some non-plant stuff. I'm going to be potting up into tree fern, not pond, because these might need to be shipped. And pond's just a little bit too messy and too heavy to ship. And I know what you might be thinking, tree fern fiber in this economy, but I want to give these cuttings like the best chance possible. And I just don't want to sell a plant like this in moss, because I just don't think that it's going to sprout as quickly. So that's my thinking. I'm not against selling plants in moss if, I don't know, I think it's going to be like a quick turnaround, like the person will get it and they can quickly get it out of the moss as quickly as possible if they don't like moss like I do. But I think it's gonna live in tree fern for a little bit longer, so that's why. I already forgot what this one is. Oh no, this is the Curve Queen. Oh yeah, that's the last plant I did. Okay, let's start with you. That is not going to fit in here. Or maybe it will. It'll be a snug fit, but that might be fine. Okay, so I know I told you guys a little bit about our trip last video, our trip to the UK, but I want to say, I have more to say, just in terms of like our plans to eventually move to the UK. So for anyone who doesn't know, my boyfriend is from there and his family are in Wales. As his mom gets older, he really wants to be closer to her. He's lived here for 12 years now. Moving to Vancouver was never supposed to be a permanent forever thing for him. It was actually supposed to be a 1-year working holiday, and then he got a job at the same company that I used to work for, and he stuck around for a really long time. It just happens that way, and then we kind of built a life here together in the last few years, and he's now at the point where he's like ready to go back because he left there because there weren't like many job opportunities and things like that, and that might still be true, but we're both at the age where we don't want the career to be like everything. We want to work in order to live the life that we want. And right now the life that he wants, and me obviously, is, you know, a quiet life, like not in the countryside, but somewhere that's not, you know, a bustling city. Like we could never live in London or anything. And then for me personally, I'm not very attached to Vancouver as a city. I grew up here. I wasn't born here. I was born in Taipei, Taiwan, but I've lived here since 1990, and I've come to realize that, sorry, you can't really see what I'm doing. I've come to realize that the city is just, it's not for me. It is so incredibly expensive to live here, and for what? So many people move here to be near the mountains and the ocean simultaneously, but it is so incredibly expensive. And if you're not like hiking all the time or snowboarding and, I don't know, going to the beach all the time, then what does the city really have to offer you? And that's kind of like where my head is at. And I've always wanted to live in the UK. I really like it there. So many people say to me, like, especially this trip, they're like, why do you want to move to the UK? Like English people. It happened enough times for me to feel like, is there something wrong with living in the UK? Like, am I missing something here? And I also wondered for a little bit, like, is it like a, you know, subtle message to me saying like, they don't think that I'm fit to live in the UK or like I would fit in or like something like that. But then I remembered that they said the same, like not these exact people, but like people said the same to my boyfriend when he moved to Canada. And then when he was talking about moving back, they were like, why would you want to move back? I don't know if there's like just some perception of just like the quality of life being better in Canada, but there's like a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences. No place is perfect, obviously. For me, I think I would really be like kicking myself if I didn't make the plunge to live somewhere that I've always wanted to live. Again, like I really don't feel much for Vancouver. The only thing is that like my friends and family are obviously here, so that's the only thing that really ties me to this city. But in terms of like the quality of life that I can have here and what this city has to offer me, I don't see myself being happy here for a long time. The thing about Vancouver, in case you don't know, is that, well, like I think most people will know that like the real estate prices here are just ridiculous. It costs so much to buy real estate here, which makes the cost of living quite high, but at the same time, the wages here are quite low compared to the rest of Canada. I don't know if it's like one of the lowest, but it is lower than other parts of Canada. So like to do the same job here would pay less. So people really do make quite a big sacrifice to live here. And I don't really see that sacrifice is paying off for me. So basically this last trip, we were approaching it, at least I was mostly approaching it as like trying to see the UK as, you know, a place that we're gonna live, because we're physically there. So it's a lot easier to imagine yourself like, this is my home now. So like, what does life look like? And what does life look like for our friends? And like, you know, just trying to gain as much knowledge as possible for what it would be like to live in there, what the challenges would be. And actually at the same time, it was very similar for my boyfriend as well, because he hasn't lived there for 12 years. So much has changed in that time in terms of like what things cost, and like cities look completely different. So we own this house that we live in right now. By the way, I'm reusing the pot that the Carib Queen was in originally for my cutting, for my top cutting. Oh, except I'm going to put a bunch of pon at the bottom just as a reservoir layer, because I'm still out of leca. So we were approaching this trip a little bit differently. We weren't just doing like sightseeing and things like that. So one thing we did do was look at some neighborhoods and potential, not actual properties that we would buy, because it's not happening for a little while, but neighborhoods we could see ourselves living in that would be simultaneously close enough to cities where we can work, but also close enough to my boyfriend's family. I discovered barn conversions, which is not really a thing here. So a barn conversion is exactly what it sounds like. It's a house built from what used to be a barn. It's a good mix of both very old buildings, but with a full refresh, because obviously they converted it from a barn. So it is renovated, but the structure itself is quite old, and it's probably made of stone with really thick walls, which surprisingly keeps houses quite cool in the summer and holds heat well in the winter, which I was surprised to learn. My brother-in-law, or like my boyfriend's brother, lives in a house that I think is like 800 years old, and the houses, the walls, I mean, are like 4 feet thick. It was quite cool. Granted, it didn't get like very hot while I was there, but it was definitely cooler inside than it was outside. There was like a couple of like properties that I really wanted to see, and they were like in these like tiny little villages, a little bit outside of like a more, I wouldn't call it like a city, but a more a central part, a central town, I should say. So we did look at like some places like that, just to get an idea of what was out there, to get a sense of what house hunting would be like. One disappointing thing that we discovered is that, so we own this house that we live in, and it being Vancouver, the assumption was we will be able to sell this house when we leave and pretty much like buy a house outright in the UK, or like have a very small mortgage. But the property prices are way higher there than even what he thought, and he was like absolutely shocked to hear or see some of these property prices in like little towns that really have nothing in it. So he was really surprised that that things cost so much now. Everyone there is saying that like prices are going to be coming back down. Who knows? I don't see that happening really. These stems are so wobbly. I'm trying to like stabilize them, but they really want to, look at, like this is just tilting over. I wanted to do this. That was Huxley snorting in his sleep, by the way. I'm not farting on camera. I might have to like add a rock in there later when I finish filming, just to support this plant upright a bit. So that's all done. That's all the Carib Queens. Cutting number 1, cutting number 2, and cutting number 3. For these two, I'm going to do something that I don't often do, because I don't really take like leafless cuttings often. but I want this to sprout quicker, so I'm gonna do a little dome thing. What I'll do is I'll just tape one side of it so I can actually like open it like this to check. The next one I'll do is my Mag Ace, the wider one. Bit of pond on the bottom. I'm only doing the pond on the bottom for like my plants because again, I don't want to like make the whole pot way too much for shipping. I considered putting this back into pond because that's what it was growing in, but for some reason my heart wants to do tree fern. So anyway, we're thinking now that property will cost a little bit more than we anticipated, but at the same time we were paying really close attention to how much things cost in general to see like how much do I actually have to make, and it's almost seeming like I don't have to make as much money in the UK when I live there in order to have like kind of the same quality of life. So here's like, if anyone is interested, I feel like if you're in your 30s, you might be interested in this topic. So things that cost less versus more here versus there. Housing costs way more here. The only place where we're thinking it would be very similar is obviously London, but anywhere that we would consider living is cheaper by quite a bit. So like for the same price of what this house costs, you get something with way more land and like probably a bigger house. One thing that costs more that we realized is council tax, or what would be property tax here. So the property tax on the house is probably like 50% more in the UK. This is like comparing apples to oranges because I'm comparing this house to something like much larger with more land. But one thing that makes me think that it costs more is that council tax does not include water. So what we pay into property tax includes like water consumption. So we're not billed throughout the year for water usage. I don't know if it's different where you are or if it's like different in the States as well, but it's like you get a water bill and you pay your council tax, which is like kind of high from the few examples that I saw. So there's that costs more. One thing that costs definitely a lot less is groceries. I was so delighted to see how, well, first of all, how much delicious food is available at grocery stores or supermarkets, and like how much less it costs. So one thing that like British people are so much better at is like the grocery store brand actually makes yummy food, like yummy, like ready to eat food, or I don't know, things that you just have to kind of heat up. Like if I'm comparing to like the in-house brands here, it's always not as good as like the brand stuff. Like the President's Choice or like the no-name brand things are always like not as yummy as like the branded stuff. Their in-house branded stuff is delicious. Like they're ones that I would choose to buy. And produce costs so much less, and I think a lot of like meat and other grocery stuffs like bread costs less. I cannot even like it, the fact that a loaf of bread costs like $5 to $6 here just kills me. And like a head of cauliflower costs like $4 to $5, and in Wales I think a head of cauliflower cost 65 pence or something like that. So just groceries cost less. Petrol or fuel costs more there right now, but that's super, yeah, it fluctuates a lot. Oh, also like phone bills and things like that, it's way cheaper. You get way more for way less money, but that's, I think, a Canada problem. So another thing we were comparing is like, how much is it gonna cost to run a coffee shop and have like your own business? Because that's one thing that both of us have always wanted to do, like separately. Before we even met each other, we always had it in our personal career plans to one day own our own coffee shop. And I don't need my coffee business to be like this massive thing that blows up and it's like huge and it has so many locations. That never really was the desire for me. It's like I wanted to be like an owner operator, because like working in a coffee shop and like making coffee for people is something I could see myself doing every day, like kind of tirelessly, because I always I've said this before, I felt like I was put on this earth to make coffee, and I feel a lot of gratification from it, and I think I'm quite good at it too. So it was really good to be able to talk to Maxwell, who owns Kelowna Coffee, and he was telling us, because he's he has a location in Bath, but he is opening a location in London, and he was telling us the rent prices, and I was shocked and angry. I knew that Vancouver rent prices were high, and that includes like commercial leases and stuff, but I thought it would be more in London, and obviously it depends on like where you are. Well, actually it depends where you are, like which street you are in, a little bit more in London. So let's say like there's like a big street, and I can't even think of a street off the top of my head, but like, okay, so let's say it's like Liverpool Street. If you have a prime location right on that street, like across from the subway, that's going to cost a lot of money. But if you had a location just around the corner, the rent drops like drastically, which is not really that drastic here. It all just kind of costs a lot. And then the prime locations cost just a ridiculous amount of money that only like, I don't know, Uniqlo can afford. But I was really surprised to learn that like you're able to get rent in London, which is not where I'd open a coffee shop, but just using London as an example, you'd be able to rent a space in London for the year, and that would be maybe like 2 months rent in Vancouver. So that's already like way cheaper to operate. The other thing is that I didn't really pay much of attention to this last time. I don't really know why, but coffee, like the drink itself, costs more than Vancouver. So I'm comparing like specialty coffee in Vancouver, you know, a hipster cafe that sources ethically with a coffee and like has really nice equipment, does the latte art, that kind of tier of coffee in Vancouver, and I'm comparing it to like grocery store coffee, Starbucks, you know, stuff that like comes out of a machine that someone just presses a button, and there's no real barista making it. It actually costs more, way more in the UK. It's almost like it costs the same in pounds as it would in dollars. So something that's like $4 here would cost £4 there, and it's something like 1.6 is the conversion. So long story short, drinks cost a lot, and I was actually really surprised, and because after learning like how much rent is and kind of having a general idea of what wages are like in the UK, which is very similar to here, but the sad thing is that they actually make more, like baristas would make more. So your labor would be very similar to here. I know that in London, the minimum wage is higher than anywhere else in the UK. Just, it made me feel sad for Vancouver. And also made me feel like Vancouver should be charging more for coffee because it costs so much to operate a coffee shop here. And everyone is just competing to be so shiny, so new, so like architectural and like designy here. The hot coffee shops that are opening in Vancouver, I don't think any of them cost less than $1 million to build out. And it doesn't need to be like that, but it kind of feels like that's the expectation now for a coffee shop. I just think like the British embrace like the old a lot more than North America does. So that was really eye-opening, and it made me feel like it would be a lot more feasible to open a coffee shop in the UK. So I really think that we could make something of that, and then that's a viable opportunity for us, provided we have like the funding to do so. But yeah, that's essentially how we approached our trip. I know Charmaine talks all the time about having to kind of start her life back over, like when she moved here from California, and how lonely she could feel without like her set of friends, and how much she appreciated finding her own plant friends that were not her husband's friends. That's also one thing to consider. I've been thinking about this a lot. One thing I've also noticed is that like, so I think this stems from a lack of the need for things to be like really shiny and new and just spotless and really like just new looking, like an obsession with new that North America seems to have, and Asia, I would say. Asian countries really like their new and shiny things. So one thing I noticed is that there's a lot less emphasis on things being really clean. So I found that like litter doesn't really get cleaned up on the streets as much. Obviously it depends on which town or city you're in. Also, like I found, ask me how I know this, I found that cleaning chemicals were not as strong there. They don't have that American muscle, you know? Maybe it was just what the people had in their houses where I was like, you know, trying cleaning chemicals. So when it's just a side story, when I was there, like I just had this like insatiable itch to clean something, because I think because like I was cleaning so heavily my own house before I left, I just felt like I had this momentum going that I couldn't keep going, and I really wanted to clean someone's house while I was there. So I cleaned my boyfriend's friend's house. We stayed at his house in London, and like one day I was just like washing some dishes because we ate food, and I was just like, well, why don't I just clean this? And then before I knew it, I cleaned the whole kitchen using his stuff, and like it's not bad. It definitely does the job, but I'm used to like chemicals being a lot more strong. But I also know the same thing with my mother-in-law's house, just a lot more gentle stuff. But I feel like there's a lot less emphasis on hygiene, like the washing of the hands, the sanitizing with alcohol, stuff like that, which maybe played into why it took so long to get COVID under control in the UK. But yeah, these are all things that I was scrutinizing a lot, just because I'm desperate to feel assured that I know what life could be like. Just like a good, albeit somewhat general sense of like what life will feel like when I move there, because it's such a big decision that I want to feel sure about it. People ask like, are you sure you want to do this? And it's really hard to answer that question because I don't exactly know what life on the other side will be like. So I was trying really desperately to try to figure it out and try to like get into the mind of a local and just pretend like, you know, imagine this was my life and I'm like on the train and I'm going to work, and like, how does this feel? Does this feel right? And stuff like that. But all that said, it's not going to happen for like, it's a few years from now for sure. And even when I do move, Vancouver will always kind of be like a base to me anyways, because my family's here and obviously like my closest friends are here. So yeah, that's my thoughts on you moving to the UK, which is like, it feels imminent, but it also is not, but time flies, who knows. But anyway, it's a little later than I hope it would be at this point in filming. So I am making my labels now, and we're gonna have to wrap this up because I'm going out for dinner. My boyfriend's taking me out to a French restaurant for my birthday. Click to connect. Hello. Print. Yeah, so my birthday's tomorrow, but he's not here tomorrow. He's got to do a bit of travel for work. Why do I need this? I don't need this. So I actually don't really have any plans tomorrow. And then I'm getting together with like Jing and Charmaine on the weekend for my birthday. So by the time you see this, my birthday's already over. The big 36 this year. So now I will never confuse the stumps. I have not finished potting up, but my camera's running out of battery now. It's starting to flash. So I gotta wrap this up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish repotting the rest of the stuff off camera. And then I'm just gonna pop in the footage right here as I'm talking. These are the cuttings that I'm selling. All the stumps are gonna get a little dome on top, as I mentioned, so I'll be able to hopefully sprout them faster. Everything's gonna get watered with Great White, dissolved in water, just to get things moving. And then I'm gonna clear out a space in my tent that gets a little bit more light so I can get these like stumps blasted with light, warmth, humidity. Hope that the Great White works its magic, and hopefully they'll start sprouting sooner rather than later so I can get some plant sales going. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me while I chop up some Anthuriums. I never really know what to say at the end of these videos because it was just such a stream of consciousness coming out of my mouth. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you next week. Mwah.